Monarchy, From Middle Ages to Modernity by David Starkey, book review. So I got this as an audiobook from a British friend. In fact, if you've watched one of my previous videos, it was the same British friend who gave me an audio copy of This Sceptred Isle, which is a radio program, History of Britain. He also, in the same moment, gave me a copy of the audiobook of Monarchy, From Middle Ages to Modernity by David Starkey. I'm sure it also comes in print as well, but this is the audio version of it. And then the audiobook also comes with an interview with the author at the end. So I gave this a listen largely just because I had it. And I used both this and This Sceptred Isle, which I mentioned in a previous video, as largely my main knowledge of British history. Now, David Starkey is apparently a famous TV personality in Britain. I, being an American, really had no idea who he was before I started this book, although there is some discussion about that in the interview with the author at the end of the audiobook. He does talk about his career in television. He mentions actually in the author's interview at the end, talks about his reputation as the most hated man in television, apparently a reputation he has in British TV. And I've actually since discovered that a lot of my British friends have a strong distaste for this man. Apparently he holds some repugnant politics, maybe, I don't know, and comes off as being very rude on TV. Again, I don't know. I don't watch British TV. I've not seen it. So I mention all that by way of saying, by way of saying I'm completely ignorant of any larger controversy around the author, whatever it may or may not be, and I was able to enjoy this book just simply as storytelling, as simply as an interesting history book. This book is called Monarchy from the Middle Ages to Modernity. It starts off with Richard III. Or actually, I think it starts off right before Richard III with, what was it, Edward the... Well, it starts off with Edward right at the end of the War of the Roses, and then Richard III. So, kind of from the end of the War of the Roses, and then all the way up through Queen Victoria. If memory serves, this book also stops at the end of the 19th century. It doesn't get into the 20th century. There was a companion book, Monarchy, the Beginning, which I've not read, which presumably traces everything from the beginning of the British monarchy up to the War of the Roses. There's also a TV series called Monarchy, which David Starkey is involved with, and I've not seen that TV series, and I'm not sure how much that impacted the book, or how much the book impacted the TV series, or vice versa. Now, I'm actually not much of a monarchist myself. I mean, I'm an American, so it's none of my business, but I just think it's silly that Britain spends so much time talking about kings and queens and stuff, and yet it is part of their history. And the advantage of focusing on a king or queen, as opposed to maybe focusing on history from below or the lower classes, is that it's easier to make an engaging story out of kings or queens, regardless about how you feel about it politically. And David Starkey does this beautifully. The main selling point of this book is its history as a story. And David Starkey has excellent skills as a storyteller. He focuses in on the quirks and peculiarities of each monarch and has lots of interesting anecdotes. Now, despite the rather intimidating sounding title, From Middle Ages to Modernity, this book is incredibly easy to digest, and it's almost like a novel. The beauty of the book is that it touches not only larger-than-life figures, like Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth, but also a lot of the lesser-known monarchs. And I guess I'm speaking as an American here. I really knew nothing about William the Fourth or Edward the Sixth before reading this book. And even those names, William the Fourth, Edward the Sixth, seem like they're designed to put you to sleep. But David Starkey has dug up some very interesting historical anecdotes about these figures. So he brings them all to life. The big Hollywood characters like Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth, and then some of the characters some of the monarchs which you may not be familiar with, at least if you're an American like I am. There's also some very interesting parts in this history. The English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell, and the abolition of the monarchy, and England's temporary experiment with republicanism are in here. I mean, despite being called monarchy, there was a brief period in this history where England did experiment with trying to set up a republic, which is one of those things maybe that doesn't get talked about enough. And David Starkey actually makes that point in the interview with the author at the end. He says, people forget that it was England, not France, but England, which was the first country to publicly try the monarch at a trial, publicly execute him, and officially declare monarchy illegal and establish a republic. That was England that did that first. Everybody forgets about it. And he's absolutely right. People do often forget about it, and it's interesting to think that did happen in England. Now, I think he's got more of a pro-monarchy bent than I do. He uses the fact that the Republican experiment failed and monarchy returned to kind of argue for the inevitability of monarchy. At least I think that's what's implied with the author's interview at the end. I don't know about that. I think it could have gone either way depending on a number of factors. I mean, as it happened, the Republican experiment didn't work out. I don't know if that has to mean it was inevitable that the Republican experiment didn't work out in England. But whatever, it's a debate. Point being, I guess, is he tells the story well in this book. It's a well-told story. It's a well-told book, and for anyone who likes history, I'd recommend this one.